morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in to the Weekend Grill. We're back after a week hiatus. And this week, we're still Paul Less. He should be back next week, the great man from London. But we have a star-studded lineup today. We have Dan Williams / Pommy in Oz. Dan, Pommy, thanks for joining us.
G'day, how are we all doing?
I'm good. Do you want to say something about yourself for those who don't know who you are? Most of us know who you are, but you want to give us a bit of a...
I'd imagine most people know me, but yeah, for those who don't know me, I am Dan Pommy in Oz, as most of you will be aware. Cover Carlton on the Great Blue Abroad show. Got my own channel as well where we do the sparse world of AFL football, but genuinely I'm known for my stats and having a bit of a crack as well.
I love your stats.
Trying to have a bit of fun.
Beautiful. We do appreciate you joining us on short notice, and hopefully it's going to be a very good show for everyone to view. I have no doubt. On the agenda today, mate, we're going to speak about the media spectacle at Carlton, what's been happening in the last 6 weeks, if you want to call it. I mean, I know me and Paul talk about Carlton every week, but the harsh reality is they've been in the media for the wrong reasons, and rightfully so. I also want to mention the Damien Hardwick resignation and get your thoughts on that. I know you're big on coaches and all that sort of all the culture and all that sort of stuff. I also want to speak about are the Power Premiership threat with you and what you think of them, and the young talent in the AFL, that's players and also coaches, which I very avid viewer of your young talent videos, and you just recently put one up about the mid-season draft today, which everyone should check out. That's really good. And then we'll run through our Who's Cooking segment. We'll go through a few viewer questions, which they were flooding through, which is good, and a mini round 12 preview. So
Smash out.
Yeah. So look, let's get started. What's happening at Carlton the last couple of weeks? Talk. Let's go. Let's have a conversation.
Hey, TS. I thought 6 weeks was a bit generous when you said what's happening at Carlton. It could almost be 20 years.
I didn't want to jazz up the numbers, but
Oh, dear. It's a tough one, isn't it? They look disjointed, disenchanted. I always think the biggest worry is when the fans become fractured. I think when you see the fans start to publicly hate the club, I don't mean that in a nasty way, you meant to as a fan, but that is the first warning signs of maybe not all is well at the great Icon Park. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because they look disconnected is probably the best way I think you describe. And Carlton are the most reactive football club I've ever seen in sport in the terms of on field, it goes bad, they panic. Off the field, it goes bad, they panic. We saw Luke Sayers come out because Matheson slagged the club off. He suddenly appears and we haven't seen him for 2 years. He's like Jimmy Hoffa up until that point. Do you know what I mean? Voss starting to get a little bit Nancy in the interviews. He's reactive. Real reactive football club. And until I think we get some stabilisation, you can never expect on field to be different to what we are off field.
Do you see a bit or a vast change with what's happened? Let's go to on field just for a second. Do you see a vast change in what's happening or what's transpiring on field early season 2022 compared to early season 2023?
I subscribe to a little bit of a different philosophy. I don't think it's as bad as people think. I know the game style isn't everyone's cup of tea. It's not sexy football. It's more like 45-year-old married for 20 years in your pyjamas sexy, I think, at the moment. But it makes sense. You look at Collingwood, and Collingwood have been dramatically improved from last year, and everyone last year was saying you can't sustain winning tight games. And my mindset was, if you're winning, that's sustainable, is it not? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Most great sporting clubs are remembered for winning games they shouldn't do. Carlton have had to make a shift from being one-dimensional in the contest to be a bit more balanced. And Voss has done the right thing. I back Voss with what he's done. However, the problem is it's not getting the on-field results, but it is a more balanced system. And right now, Carlton have gone through that cycle. Get a coach, sack him 2 years later. Get a coach, sack him 2 years later. We've got a 5-year long-term plan, but we're only looking short-term.
Yeah.
Voss needs the time because this system, although not aesthetically pleasing, is a balanced system if the boys execute. And at some point in time, the players have got to take some accountability, which, in fairness, Cripper coming out yesterday and having to go at Carroll, that turns me on. Bit of fight, a bit of chutzpah from him. Wheaterin's gone to the board and said it's the players, it's not Voss. Bit of accountability starting to appear. And once that comes on field, the boys are going to be all right.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned about the pressure and all that sort of stuff, and Cripps standing up for himself, Wiedering sort of taking the onus and getting on board and saying, look, us as players, we need to accept some form of that responsibility. I've just found in the last 2-3 weeks, I've sat back and just relaxed and just watched everything happen and trying to digest in a way as to what's actually going on, because early in the season, we 4-1 and whatever it was, four wins or 3 wins with draw, whatever, and now we're 4-6-1. I think what's happened is we just need to take a backward step. That's just my opinion. I'm happy to let it sit back and watch it all sort of fall in front of us. But I also realise that, as you said, the fans are reactive. But my issue with Carlton at the moment, or particularly after Friday night's game, was I just get the impression that anything they do or say now is going to be disregarded by their fans. Like the club has a word, and as far as I'm concerned, their word is their bond. The vibe I get is, as you said, the fans and the club is so disjointed from one another that everyone's looking for all these answers. I look at it and I go, this is just all theatre. Now, my thoughts, Oscar. I see it in a different way. How I see the game and how I see the players is a bit different. I am passionate, very much like you and all other fans. However, I just feel at the moment it's best to just sit back and just watch the spectacle unfold. What I do hope is the events of the last 48 hours, the external pressure, the media's throwing punches. They're trying to divide and conquer. We're getting swung from this angle. We're getting swung from that angle. Voss is getting punched. The players are getting punched. Luke Sayers is getting punched. They're getting battered, right? And as you said, it's good of Patrick Cripps to come out and one aspect is to iron what was said about him that was factually incorrect, as he put it. And it's good because I hope that all this external pressure from the outside inspires all the growth within. And this, for me, is going to be very interesting to see. And I'm not concerned about what happens this week and what happens next week against Essendon. Obviously, I do like the fact that, Sayers has come out and said, no, Voss is our man. So let's get this. If I was a Carlton, which I am a Carlton, obviously, let's get this rhetorical, let's get this bullshit nonsense talk of we've got to get rid of the coach. It's not happening. Stop talking about it. I realise that as fans on the outside, externally, where there's information that the club we as fans are not privy to that the club is. There's things that are going on inside the club that, sometimes get leaked or don't get leaked for whatever reason that actually is. I find it prudent that we should just sit back a bit and just let it see. Just see what actually happens before we can actually judge. And it's hard because after a game you're emotional. Post hour or post couple of hours after the game, we're all emotional. We're wound up, etc. And that's normal. But yeah, as I said, I hope that all the external pressure that they have faced particularly in the last 48 hours, it's been pretty strong. That they have found some growth within, and it sort of it picks them up, and particularly with their captain Cripps. He stood up for himself. He grew a set of kahunas. I'm not saying he didn't have them, but he grew a set of balls, and he really stuck it to him. He goes, don't ever question that. We all know what was said, and that's really powerful. And I think what their president's done, Luke Sayers, in getting rid of. Some want to agree, some don't want to agree. However you want to look at Craig Matheson and his uncle Bruce Matheson, power brokers, whatever they are. To not who knows who was forced to do what, but as we've seen now, Craig Matheson's resigned. I think it's a step, and we just need to cut out the external noise. I think that's big, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm just happy to just sit back and just let it play out. Just cut the bullshit, fuck the external noise, focus on the job ahead. As I said, I'll reiterate, I'm glad that they did say Voss is our man. It's not a debate. It's not negotiable anymore. Stop fucking talking about it. He's our man. That's it. Whatever happens after this year, we'll reassess. I think personally that's the first line of messaging that needs to be taken, that needs to put up high. Like that needs to be elevated. Don't question the coach. Give him time. It's his second year. Let's be real. Like he inherited a list which was so-called a rebuild. You're well aware of the list profile. I know you're all over it. You're massive on it. But I think we can understand that there is perhaps or an element of overestimating of what the list is actually about. But I'm happy that that they've said Voss is the coach and just stick with it. Have you got anything final to say about the Blues? We could go for 3 hours, mate. I know, mate.
It's Pandora's box, isn't it? I mean, I always look at it this way. I mean, like, our fan base is the best fan base in the world. I mean, that's non-negotiable. Do you know what I mean? Take all the other 17 clubs, put them in a little box, mark it pathetic. When you compare it to Carlton, Carlton's is the most ferocious. It's loud. It cares.
Probably going to get slated for saying that.
That's not disrespectful to the club.
I know.
I'd say Collingwood probably are in the box with us. But aside from that, we do care. And I think disenchantment comes from the football club within. They can fix this before it gets to this stage. I don't mind people calling for Voss to be sacked. I don't mind them calling for the results to be better because that is the fan base's job. My issue is how the club react to them things. And I think until the club really truly embrace the fan base and see that 100,000 people this year are going to be signing up on the H word, hope.
Yeah.
And from hope, everything great we know springs from. That is when we'll really change. Because we understand the players are under the cosh. I know they're under the cosh. You've only got to see it. Harry Mackay at the moment couldn't hit a cow's backside with a banjo if you paid him. But he needs our love, but he also needs us driving the standard, and that is something that the club has to embrace. Instead of giving the token messages, I knew this was going to be where we are now. People sack Voss, change everything 4 rounds ago.
Yeah.
Why weren't the club? Like, the club are suddenly shocked about it. I knew it was going to happen. I knew Carolyn Wilson was going to look for that moment to drive the dagger. Does Cripps care? Which is disgusting. We know Cripps cares. But it was always going to happen because it sells papers, unfortunately. When Collingwood make a mistake or Carlton do, the media can't wait to put the petrol on the fire. So that's where our job comes in. And I like the fact that now Carlton are rising up against Carolyn. She shouldn't be a media person. Can't believe Carolyn Wilson's still in the media in this country. Rise up, fight, because that's how the only way we're going to get out of this mess is we all fight, and all of us have to be fighting in one direction. This is Dunkirk. We're all on little yachts and tuggerboats coming back to Blighty.
Is that why you were in the hat?
Yeah.
Sorry,
it is.
There's a funny joke somewhere there.
Hey, do you know what I mean?
But,
but at some point, D-Day is going to happen, and we're all going to have to get back on them boats.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to take out Mr. Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler to us is that flag. That's our flag. So we've got to come back and galvanise and walk. So it's going to be interesting because it's going to be tough because if they lose this weekend, it's going to be a bad time.
Okay, but just quickly on that, just before we exit the Carlton segment, is it realistic to expect them, given the circumstances, and I mean, look, I know it's a shit excuse, but the 6 changes that they're probably going to have, which we'll find out tomorrow night at selection, is it really... Are we setting high expectations on expecting Carlton to win tomorrow night?
You're a fan. You should believe.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't have belief...
No, there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, do you believe... Pretend you're not a Carlton supporter. Let's say you're a neutral having a look from the outside. You're assessing the game. With the rotations that are about to come and given the form the last 3-4 weeks, which, to be fair, Melbourne haven't been setting the world on fire, but I still think they've got another gear. Do you believe that would you see it as an upset if Carlton wins on Friday night?
It'd be from a statistical point of view, yeah.
Sure.
It would be, if someone said to me they'd put 5K on Carlton, I'd be like, you want your bumps feeling? That's mental.
Yeah.
But again, it's sport. Opportunity is bred there for 6 players to come in potentially. Why not? Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't it be a great motivation? Friday, 10 o'clock hits, Carlton win. Tell you what, everything feels better, doesn't it? All of a sudden, everything looks good.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Your pasta tastes
them,
better. Your coffee tastes better. Everything tastes better. Even Paolo.
Yeah, do you reckon Paul tastes better?
Hey, Paolo's bog dome will be more shiny. Tell you what, Saturday morning.
You can see the twinkle in his eye when we win. He grows that extra leg.
Hey, he loves it. Yeah, do you know what I mean? He's almost normal height when Carlton win.
God bless him.
Love you, pal.
Love you, Paul. You can't wait to have you back. But no, look, that's fantastic. That's fair enough. Now, look, moving away from Carlton, as I said, we could be here for ages, but we don't have ages. I want to move on to the Damien Hardwick resignation that occurred last week. I wanted to cover it last week, but circumstances saw us not here. Do you have any thoughts on that? On not not just the resignation itself, not just the actual decision, but the circumstances surrounding it. Is there any, like, I'll just to preface what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I just find it hard to believe how a news reporter seemed to know something before the players did. And I think without opening a can of worms, I think there is an ulterior motive or a reason behind this resignation. Well, I have an inkling of what it is. I don't want to be that guy to start sprint. I've spoken to you about it, but off air. But is there anything that you see in this resignation that you read between the lines and you just go, this is a bit off? Because to me, the first one was, I want to know how Tom Morris knew, which is great journalism, by the way. I don't know who he's in bed with or who he's sitting on, but I'd like to know how a journalist knew before the playing group does, because that's usually not how a resignation goes or a sacking goes. One person does not always know. It's usually more than one. So this is the reason why I'm asking this question. I just found this, as I said, the circumstances a bit sus. I have a fair idea of what's going on. I don't want to say it because I don't want to be that guy to say it, because it will come out. But do you have any? Is there anything about that, about the way how it was handled and how it all went down, that struck you a bit weird?
We've seen some weird things. I mean, Tom Morris can sniff a pasty in a desert, can't he? I mean, he's got a gift. I'll give him that. But I mean, the weird thing is, I mean, it's a bit like, when Ratton was terminated at St Kilda, it was like, 10:30 at night, just all of a sudden they were preparing for the game. And then it's a weird thing. I mean, I think Dimmer's a great story. 2010, he came there. Look at what they've achieved in them times. 13 years? Unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? If you told me when I first came to the country, when Dimmer was there, they were going to win that many flags, be that dominant, be the poster boys of good football, I would have laughed at you. And that famous interview with Gary Lyon, where he was mocking Gale when Gale was saying we're going to win 4 flags. Yeah. You could see he was like,
a bit of a stretch here.
Oh, you're going to have to nail every draft, aren't you? What a melt. And he was right. I think Dimmer really showcases something more important in football. And there's that 2 philosophies, isn't there? The UK philosophy, the coach is rubbish, sack him in 4 weeks.
Yep.
But there is great evidence to suggest when you've got a good plan, the P word, plan, it's got to be a good plan, but you've got a good plan, then you've got commitment to stick to that plan.
Sure.
Great things happen. And I think Dimmer, for me, represents hope for my football club, because they stuck with it. It looked turgid at times, but boy, oh boy, when it came right, it came good. So wish Dimmer the best. It seems to be the new thing. I'd imagine it was a stressful position. I took it as this way. He knew the flag wasn't happening this year. So maybe it is a good time to go away, go to the States, go to England like Clarko did, get some different interpretations, rejuvenate yourself.
Yep.
Because I reckon the motivation for Dimmer's probably waned. He's done it. He can never reach that high again with Richmond. If Richmond win another flag, no one really cares. The big thing that we have in the AFL, isn't it, is ex-coaches don't win flags. I reckon Dimmer and Clarko, I reckon in the next 2 years we'll be both fighting to be that guy that proves that wrong. And I can see both of them winning a flag in the next 10 years with their clubs.
Okay. Do you have an insight, or would you like to see Dimmer? I mean, not like to see, but would you have an opinion as to perhaps what sort of club would be a good suitor for someone like Damien, for Dimmer?
I mean, the guy's a specialist in rebuild, isn't he? I mean, if I was Tasmania, I'd be saying to him right now, take 2 years out, go and see the world, go and spend a bit of time with Golden State Warriors, see how they rejuvenated their list, have a look, and come and tell you what, imagine that. All the new teams have always been the biggest letdowns, haven't they? They've been the biggest failures, really, in the system. GWS had the world look pants, let's be honest. They're Carlton B team. Gold Coast, still don't know what Gold Coast is about.
That's where I think you'll end up.
I think it'll be Tassie. I've got a feeling.
Yeah.
Dimmer, Tassie.
So do you see him waiting a couple of years on the sidelines and then, setting up shop in Tasmania when they're building their VFL team and they're introducing it in 2026 before the AFL team? Do you see him sitting on the sidelines for 2 years twiddling his thumbs, or can you see him doing something, as you said, doing what Clarko did and going to San Francisco? Clarko went and saw Ange Postecoglou in Scotland as well in his time. Do you see someone like a Damien Hardwick? Would you see it beneficial for them to do something of that nature?
I think it's huge for him, yeah. I mean, I think people forget it's 13 years at the same club, seeing the same people. You're saying hello to Doris, the tea lady, every day.
Yep.
Get a bit boring after a while. I mean, what more can Dimmer do to achieve? He's already done the unthinkable. No one, probably outside of him and Brendan Gale, actually believe they do that. I think everyone else in the media, the fan base, even Richmond fans I knew were like, oh, I'll take one. They got more than one. The development of their players was phenomenal. They probably invented modern day football as we know it. Everyone plays that pseudo Richmond way, don't they? They all play that sexy route
chaos. Let's keep the ball moving.
Yeah,
let's keep the ball in motion.
It's great to watch. I think it's great for Richmond as well. Personally, I think Richmond will enjoy it as well because they're going to have like a little micro reset. And yeah, if I was Dimmer, I'd piss off to Europe for a year.
I think it was reported. I think he went to Los Angeles today for a mini holiday for how long. I'm not sure how long, but
yeah, I mean, get around them NBA and NFL clubs, see how different things have done, and imagine that winning a flag with Tasmania. I mean, you'd be having GOAT conversations. People forget about Dimmer.
I definitely don't, and this is why I want to bring him. This is why I brought him up because I think I don't. I recognise the job that he has done, and I do remember the adversity when Carlton did beat them. You know, the irony of Carlton finishing 9th that year with the Essendon saga and knocking them out of that elimination final, and how they've rebounded and and the direction that Richmond went after that, and the direction other clubs went as well, which was, you know, one went north, one went south, and I just think the way that they did persist with him, as you said, Brendan Gale, and Richmond having faith in him and keeping that sort of trust. And where they ended up, I think that's phenomenal. And I don't think people will. I mean, I'm not saying that they won't, but I think it's very easy to forget what someone like Damien Hardwick did achieve at Richmond. It's ridiculous. He's what, a 2-time premiership player and a 3-time premiership coach. Mate, he probably should have won 4. Mate, if we're being real.
Richmond are the mantra, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Success is really, when you break it down to its core fundamentals, it's just a selfish pursuit of the plan to success. It's a selfish pursuit. You ignore everything, and that's what Richmond have done. Them little micro rebuilds they did, sacking backroom staff, bringing people in. Their focus was Dimmer's the man. This is the plan. Stick to it.
Yeah,
and they were selfish and ruthless in their pursuit of that plan. And that is probably what a lot of the clubs in the AFL need to look at.
Yep.
Carlton, if you're watching, ruthless focus on the plan. I mean, Dimmer, if he doesn't go to Tassie, if I was Carlton, Brad Lloyd's contract is out next year, make him director of football, call him, and basically the conversation is easy. Dimmer, how much? Be that simple.
Write your own check type of thing.
That would be my conversation.
Whatever you want, okay.
You're right, Damien, Pommy here, how much?
Do you think, though, just quickly as well, do you think that he would be up for, hard to say, because obviously I don't know him personally, you probably don't know Dimmer personally, but do you still think he sees himself as a senior coach, or would he be happy to adopt that sort of role of a Brad Lloyd?
That'd be my worry.
Yep.
I think it'd be a bit
do you still think he has that, not chip on his shoulder, do you still think he has that burn behind that drive to coach?
My worry about getting him in a higher role is it a Brad Scott? It's all good pushing pens for a couple of weeks.
Yep. Pushing pens, I like that.
Do you know what I mean? But eventually, you know, that desire, being in the dressing room, being with the boys.
You miss that.
I reckon there's some kind of perverted joy from being in the media as well, being under that furnace. You hear a lot of ex-players and coaches actually miss the bit they probably hated when they were there.
Yeah.
So I reckon a year with his partner, his dogs, see how he is after a year, do you know what I mean? And then see if he was in that back room. Does he miss the hustle and grind?
I suppose only he would know. When that bridge comes across, when that bridge comes around for him to cross.
I think the Tassie gig is the sexiest gig in football.
Okay.
I think it's the sexiest gig. We've seen 2 failed builds. He's the master of the rebuild. I mean, if I was AFL and I was serious about Tasmania, Brendan Gale, how much? Dimmer, how much?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Off you boys go.
Sure.
Do it again. Because Tasmania, great place to play football. The people there get behind their teams. That they are the best place to play football. Like, I'd love to play for Tasmania.
Yeah. Okay.
Fans are mental there. Do you know what I mean? They get behind Hobart Hurricanes.
I know they are. My cousin's from Tasmania.
Yeah,
they're not playing with a full deck.
Proper weather as well.
English weather.
Grass is actually green in Tassie. You know what I mean?
You're reminiscent of the English weather. That's why you reckon.
Hey, do you know what I mean, mate? Tell you what, Tasmania, if you want someone to...
do you want an ambassador to Tasmania?
You know what I mean?
Pick up the phone.
Give us a call. Give us a call.
Now, from one Premiership coach to another, well, who I think is a potential Premiership threat, and I wanted to run past you because I know you're very good with your analytics. Port Adelaide, where do you see them in the ranks here in this current season? And are they in, it's an open-ended, but are they a Premiership threat? In your humble opinion?
I think this season I think people are writing teams off way too quickly. Too quickly. I think even Richmond, people have wrote them off. You look at this week just gone, round 11, anyone can beat anyone. I think you are actually, even though I hate the equalisation, I think the AFL has absolutely destroyed a great sporting competition with this equalisation, this obsession with everyone's got to be as good as everyone else. Because that's not life. Unfortunately, life is unfair. Some teams have a bigger pull, and that's the same as human beings. But that being said, I think any team can beat any team on any day. And I think what Port play, especially at Adelaide, there's an incredible heart. There's an incredible unity. They play a good brand of football. They're tough. They're fast. They enjoy it. You can that's the big difference at the moment in form and out form. They've got like a perverted enjoyment of when it's tough. You see the players getting Collingwood.
I was about to say, sorry, I noticed that about Collingwood a lot when obviously at the Carlton Collingwood, I noticed how they celebrate these little small acts, and I just go,
do you know what I mean? Someone spoils it out of bounds.
Oh, you got Oleg Markov's doing the hands in the air like he's just conquered the world.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
I'm going like, how good's that?
There's that enjoyment,
so
and that's one thing I look at for future Premiership teams, and Port have definitely ticked the bill.
Yep.
They look like they enjoy their work.
Sure.
They look like they're having fun out there. When it's bad, they're having fun. When it's good, they're having fun. They look together, and you know what? Hinkley, I'm actually happy for him because the Australian media have wanted to sack that guy 2 weeks after he walked in there. Do you know what I mean? Every year, is it time to sack Hinkley? Be great for Big Ken. There's something about Ken, you just like him. He defends his players, he's a good coach.
I have a very high opinion of him, and as I said, we went from one coach to another. That's why I wanted to ask. I'm a big Power fan this year. I'm very worried. Like I'm on Collingwood and Geelong to win the flag for my life. But Port Adelaide is the team that I am very, very concerned about that may have that extra gear that we haven't seen. Like at the moment, in the last 2 weeks, they haven't had Xavier Dersma, Todd Marshall, Charlie...
Zachy Butters.
Zach Butters has been playing.
But he's been ridiculous, hasn't he?
He's been off the chart. We're going to speak about Zach Butters in our Who's Cooking, but Charlie Dixon, Dersma, Todd Marshall, like these are three important cogs. And I know their depth is great. I just think the way they circumnavigated their early part of their fixture, they got battered against Collingwood by 70-odd points in round 2. They cut that out of the way. They moved on. I'm very concerned about Port Adelaide and their Premiership threats. I think they could be a player.
They're the type of team that you want to play in a final.
Particularly over there.
When it's one night. When it's one night in Paris, they look like they can step up. They look like if you get them on a good night, it's going to be a nightmare. And I think people are surprised St Kilda have done well. People are surprised that Essendon have done well. People are surprised Port do well. Collingwood. But you actually break it down why they're doing well is the R word, which is the most forgotten about word in AFL because everyone gets excited by superstars. But it's the R word, the role players. You look at Port Adelaide, these guys come in for your Todd Marshalls and your Charlie Dixons. They understand their role.
Yeah.
Their role is defined. They're in a little cardboard box. They know what to do. Stocker at St Kilda, defined role. He looks a world beater because he knows his limitations, but he knows his strengths. Ken Hinkley, he's always built his Port sides like that. People forget a couple of years ago they were the minor premiers. That COVID year, they looked unstoppable. They looked like Collingwood do now, that chaos, manic pressure. They couldn't sustain it over a longer quarter. I like Hinkley, and I think, you know what, Port, I wouldn't want to play him in a final. In an eliminator, you just don't know which Port will turn up, and if it's the good Port, you're going home.
That's interesting to hear. I'm glad you answered that with such conviction because I was waiting for your opinion on it, and obviously we all respect your opinion, and I think Port are big, and I think what you're saying has a lot of merit to it, so that's grouse. Let's move on to a segment that I know this is Pommy centric. It's we're going to talk about young talent. Now we all know that you do a lot of good work with draft perspectives, future draftees. You do a lot of stuff on your YouTube channel, which I suggest everyone check out. I wanted to run through with you or quiz you in a way as like a little questionnaire in terms of the players that you've seen come up in the last 3-4 years that, you may have been involved with to some capacity as to, who you believe in your professional assessment as to who can take the next level or who is the best at the moment, who has the most scope for improvement, or even just in general, if you want to talk about like the players that you've seen drafted recently of who you think can elevate or, who you believe is that guy.
I think we're very fortunate. We've got some really tasty draftees in the last 2 years, and we've got some really tasty draftees coming through. The AFL's junior system, you're starting to see a modern-day footballer that we haven't seen. Gone are the days of a 6'4", 100 keg midfielder and everyone loses their mind. Now you're starting to see real classy footballers. It'd be an injustice, I suppose, not to talk about the two big ones at the moment. Will Ashcroft, sensational. He's taken to football like a duck to water, very clever, very good spatial awareness. Brisbane are looking after him well. Nick Dacos, though, let's talk about Nick Dacos. The Lionel Messi, you are seeing people at home, put your money on Nick Dacos. This kid is something else.
Money on what? To win the Brownlow?
Oh, money
or just on anything? Just you back him for anything?
Anything you want. This kid here, you look at him play, there's so much talked about contested possession. You don't get contested possession if you're good at what you do. Contested possession's usually because you've not found space. You look at what he does for Collingwood. High half-back, brings players in, looks for the 1-2, creates space, kills forward zones. Nick Dacos is a freak of nature. I remember seeing him when he was in his draft year, and honestly, I've not needed Viagra since. I just watched the highlights. This kid is playing the game, Nick Dacos, in slow motion. Like when he gets the ball, everyone slows down and he sees it. And you look at what he does and it's so you don't get the kudos when you're Nick Dacos because people are like, he plays at halfback, anyone can do that. Well, go and play there on Friday night, see how well you go. But tell you what, how he does, how he brings players into the game, how he manages to take players out of the game. You only have to watch that tag that Sydney did on him. Yeah. And it was banter because he knew two players were going to come to him. So he just ran through the zones. And eventually, before you know it, he had 3 players out of the position. Collingwood players were everywhere. They were like, oh my God, Nick Dacos has just taken him. It was like Moses parting seas. So Nick Dacos, he can kick, he can attack, he can defend, he can see kicks.
He can use the ball.
And he's 1-2s. That's a new thing that AFL players, it winds me up, the give and go. How often do you see it? Gets the ball, handball over the top, and he's straight there. He's like, give me the ball back. Creating his own space. Spatial awareness is huge when you're looking at draftees, and honestly, he's one of the best I've seen.
Okay, now that you've mentioned that, I'll definitively ask you, who is the best draftee that you've seen come through the draft in the last 3 years that is now applying their trade in the AFL?
Nick Dacos.
We can go 3-4. It's not a debate.
Not even close.
Right.
Like I remember at the time people were talking about JHF, good player.
Jason Horn-Frank, yep.
Nick Dacos is another league, another level.
And is it something that aside from his ability and his football, his actual prowess, is there something that off the field that he may have said or that you may have not necessarily asked, but is there something that you picked up about his personality or his traits that made you go, okay, this guy gets it? Is there something that stood out to you aside from the way he moves on the field? Is it something external to the footy field that you saw in terms of how professional, how he conducts himself, that made you go, oh my goodness, like this guy's the full package?
I think when you watch these players at junior level, what I like to look at is understand that while they're a kid, they're the superstar, but they're going to eventually take a step up into the AFL where no one cares who they are. So you can be Sam Walsh, you can be Nick Dacos, but when you go into that locker room, Scott Pendlebury's not going to look at Nick Dacos and go, oh, he's a bit good. Scott Pendlebury's going to be like, played for 13 years, I've done this, I've done that. You're nobody. You're
Sure.
nobody. You're learning in this league. But when he was in the juniors, he is Scott Pendlebury.
Yeah.
So I look at how they work. So players like Cam McKenzie, I really enjoyed at Hawthorn because he was playing with Will Ashcroft. Will Ashcroft was the star. His job was basically find ball, give it to Will.
Yeah.
And I knew he'd be a good little player for Hawthorn. Great pickup for them. Nick always had this understanding that if I'm not in the best position, I'm willing to give it up. Jason Horn didn't really have that. I felt like Horn Francis played for himself a lot. No disrespect to Jason, but Ken Hinckley's done a wonderful job at integrating him into a more unified role to round his game. But Nick Dacos, he always had that selflessness as well as the selfishness. And you could see that he fit into a team system and he understood his role and why it was pivotal to the way they played. So, and you see at Collingwood, like he doesn't play like a superstar, in my opinion. He plays like a very good player in a good team.
That's probably one of the best raps I've heard, to be honest with you. I mean, not that anyone needed, but the way that you've broken that down in terms of explaining the detail behind it. Like, I don't think you can give a second-year player, what is he, 31 games in? 32, 33 games in? That's probably the most comprehensive rap I've ever heard. Now, just as a left of field, is there one player that in your mind that you see has a bit of X factor aside from Nick Dacos that you believe got drafted that you see can elevate himself to the next level or be that guy, be the next poster boy, if you want to call it, for a certain club?
I think there's two that really stand out. Mateus Philippa, love the kid. Like, honestly, one of my favourites. I had the privilege of spending 2 hours with Mateus on a draftee. A lot of people were saying he was arrogant, but when I heard the kid speak, the way he has got a selfish commitment to be the best player and the best human Mateus can be. And under the right coach, I think he's got a really good coach, Ross, to really iron himself out. This kid here can turn a game. He's one of the underages of this draft as well, one of the younger kids. This kid can do everything. He can score goals, he can defend. He has no arrogance on the field. He's willing to die on there. And that's a big thing. When you watch Mateus play, every blade of grass he covers, he'll bleed for. And Mateus, I would say in 3 years, when you redo the draft we've just done, he'll be above Will Ashcroft.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Another big rap. So Mateus Philippou from St Kilda.
Absolutely adore the kid. Absolutely. Everything he thinks is the right thing. He's not arrogant. He has such a hunger to learn. And if he gets the right people around him, boy, oh boy, he could be another level. And the other one you haven't seen, Braden George at North Melbourne. We all get excited about Tom Papley and Charlie Cameron. This kid, what he knows about goal scoring, some people will never know. This kid is a natural finisher. He is lethal. It's like watching the Hitman when you watch him play. Ball hits the deck, he kicks it. He can go high. He can play on tall guys. He stays fit under Clarkson. We know Clarkson froths an X-Factor forward, Mr. Cyril Rioli.
Yeah, look no further.
Tell you what, he can finish on both feet. He can do the unthinkable. When he's fit in that team, look out. I think Braden George could be, in my opinion, one of the best players. And I suppose we didn't talk about him. Ollie Hollands, work ethic-wise, any kid that has COVID during the COVID year and buys himself a treadmill to run and run and run and go from one of the worst runners at your club to the best runners at your club in a year says a lot about you. That kid's got a hunger to learn. And we talk about Carl Amon, Ed Langdon. This kid could be out of sight, out of mind of them two players. He could redefine the wing. The
wingman, role. Okay, yeah. In terms of a running capacity?
Running capacity, but also footy smarts. You don't see wingman tough. The guy's built like a toddler. But he throws his body, and he's always done that at juniors. It's something that stood out in his last year. This guy wasn't scared to go against the big boys. He wasn't scared. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, right.
Because he belongs. And I think he's going to be one hell of a footballer. But I would say the guys we've named, you redo this draft, that's top 5.
Okay. So you believe in 3 or 4 years' time, you'll have Mateus Philippou at number 1, Ashcroft number 2, maybe Braden George from North Melbourne at 3, Ollie Hollands at 4, something along those lines.
And Cam McKenzie, we touched on.
from Hawthorn.
Absolute. Yeah. Him working with Sam Mitchell, look out AFL, because that is a Sam Mitchell footballer. He is a guy that
Has he got Sam Mitchell written all over him?
Sam Mitchell will literally kiss the grass every morning saying, thank you for working with this guy. Thank you.
So good. All right, that's fantastic. I rate that. That's great. That's awesome. Now let's move on to some viewer questions. I'll run you through them. A lot of them I'm going to direct at you. A lot of them actually I think will be suited to you anyway. The first one comes from Pawan. Rank the teams below from the most exciting brand of football to the least exciting brand and why. So it's Essendon, Adelaide, Bulldogs and Collingwood. I'll repeat. Essendon, Adelaide, Bulldogs and Collingwood. Rank the teams from the most exciting brand to the least exciting brand and why.
Okay, so most, I think it's like celebrity chefs, right? So we'll go reverse order. So we've got, I'd say Bulldogs would be, Essendon would be fourth.
Yep.
Essendon are like Mary Berry from Britain's Great British Bake Off. Don't know if anyone's familiar with it. But,
you wouldn't know who that is. Really.
But she's like your nana. There's something quite wholesome about Mary Berry. She's just wholesome. She makes good cakes, great with a cup of tea. That's what Essendon's game plan is. It's not sophisticated. It's not sexy. But you know what? It's just grinding. It's just a workhorse. It's safe. You know Essendon this year. Big question with Essendon last year. Never forget the pathetic rock concert they did before they played Carlton. Yeah. Dyson Heppel, turning into Spartacus at the start of the game and players picking the nose and looking around as he's trying to deliver a speech. And it was the most limp performance I've seen. I actually felt sad for Essendon because I was like, come on. They've actually got a spine now. They actually look like they're up there. So they'd be like a Mary Berry. Then up next, the Doggies. Doggies are like Gino De Campo, the Italian chef.
Never heard of him. Oh, sorry, Paul does always.
Yeah.
He goes, I do know that guy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So do you know what I mean?
That's so good.
He looks the part. It is quite sexy to see. You wouldn't eat some of his food, and that's probably the Doggies. They look really good, but at times they can be très terrible. In at second, Adelaide. I love Adelaide. Adelaide at Ainsley Harriott, the famed guy. You see the meme, year boy, all the time. Give your meat an old rub. The famous chef. He's exciting. It is exciting. It's young. It's hungry. It looks dangerous. And in at number one, Collingwood, Nigella Lawson.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Had to be a Brit, didn't it? It's not you're going to say Gordon Ramsay.
Nah, but it's Nigella Lawson when you watch Collingwood, isn't it? She's pouring garlic butter on just a cream cracker, and you know it's not great, but God, it looks sexy, and God, you want it in and around your mouth. That they are the sexiest team to play. I hate to say it as well because I can't stand Collingwood, but I'll tell you what, I tune into every Collingwood game because it's hungry, it's fast, it's quick, it's Hail Mary football. You know as well, like all four teams we've listed, they ain't going to die. You've got to kill them. And it's something that is sexual to watch in sport, teams that won't die. And you'd have to kill Collingwood to win a game.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I do agree with that. I'd have, Collingwood and Adelaide. I really enjoy watching Adelaide play, a young Adelaide team. I think they're going to be somewhere very soon. Next question from Jacob L.A. Fontaine is a very simple one. Who finishes higher, Carlton or Richmond?
Carlton.
Cool. Carlton? Yeah, I agree with that. That's cool. The next one is from Lay 11. LAIS 11. Lay 11?
Yeah.
How easily can goal kicking / accuracy be fixed? This is you. I'm just going to shut up here. This is you.
Well, I mean, if it's not a mental application, it's a skill, technical difficulty. It's just hard work. It's just hard work. You become an expert on everything you do if you can replicate 1,000 hours into it. So not hard.
Not hard.
Not hard.
Okay.
But then when it's that little grey thing between your ears, incredibly hard. Might not be fixed. Could be your life. Do you know what I mean? Your brain is the most powerful tool, and people forget any sport is 90% your brain and 10% bit of skill. If you probably break it down to the core fundamentals, it's 8% skill, 2% attitude, and then the rest in your brain.
Okay, yeah, wow.
And if it's someone like, I'm assuming it's a Harry Mackay question, if that is, you only got to look at how Harry plays at the moment. He tries to delay the kick. He's now starting to go for marks one-handed uncontested because he doesn't want the kick. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want the pressure. Who wants to kick a ball in front of 90,000 people when you know you're going to miss? Horrible, dark, lonely place to be. So with Harry, it's basically how you'd help. And this is why it makes me laugh. How would you help your mate if he was suicidal? Would you just tell him he's shit? Or would you, give him a hug, bring out the pictures year 11 formal. Do you know what I mean? Try and get him to remember when he was the person that you fell in love with as your best mate. You give him some love. You give him some care.
Yeah.
You get him around good people. You get him to focus on staying alive and finding self-love. And that's what you got to do with Harry. You've got to be like, look, you know what? 2 years ago, you won a Coleman, buddy. You know what I mean? It's not that long ago. Give him a bit of love, get around him. And you know what? Harry's probably an 8-goal game away from us falling in love. But my first message to Harry, if you're watching, ignore every toffee who tells you not to take a snap round the corner. That's your bread and butter. That's your safety blanket. Go and do that, my friend. I don't care if you miss doing the snap. That's who you are. If you're gonna die doing what you're good at.
Cool. Yeah. Wise words. I like that one. Next one is from Marshy or Mr. XRH1E.
Good mate of mine.
That's a good mate of yours. Okay.
Good mate, man.
Bit of a banter one here. Any insight on whether Carlton's lawyers are getting a raise in the near future? I'd say they're on retainer. What, $250,000 industry standard these days for lawyers?
I think they've actually come over from Little Italy in Chicago.
They got the mafia one.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, like honestly, if I ever commit a crime, I tell you what, dearie.
Just call Paul.
Dearie
Paul's
me.
uncles will come down and look after you.
Dearie me, Carlton Football Club, people give me stick because we're brown paper bag FC, as they call us, but we've defected now to the law. It's unbelievable. Nah, Marsh, I hope the highest paid people at Carlton Football Club are them lawyers, because I'll tell you what,
they'd have to be.
I've got a few parking tickets, so if they're looking for some weekend work, come and see me, because I like to park where I want.
Is this like they do it for you, like on the side type of thing, or
give me some
what's
money.
in it for them?
Oh, give me some money back from that membership.
Oh yeah. Now the last one is from Justin Akari 12. I actually like this question. I don't want to speculate, but I do like it. If Carlton get rid of Brad Lloyd, who is the best person for them to go after for that role? I know you mentioned someone potentially of a Damien Hardwick-esque, but let's be realistic, there's probably a 90% chance that's probably not going to happen. Is there someone, or question without notice, is there someone in your mind that you believe if Carlton were to go down the avenue of getting rid of someone like Brad Lloyd, who would be the best person for them to go after for that role?
Well, you look at...
That's actually a really good question.
It's a great question as well. Great question. Well, you look at like Don Pikes doing the same role at another football club, and when they brought him in, they said he's a master tactician, and he gives us the areas that we do it. What's Brad Lloyd good about? And that's no disrespect to Brad, but what does Brad bring? He just seems like a great bloke, doesn't he? But I have always asked the question. We did a review. One of the parts of the review it was a closely kept secret. It was like the Enigma code, our review. It was just like people have been sacked, but you will never know why. Was the communication from top to bottom was sometimes disjointed and interfered with, and some players were overruled. Some people were overruled in their role, which was alluded to. Kane Liddell had his fingers in all the pies.
Sure.
But one of them pies would have been Lloydie. Now, Lloydie is the footy guy, the main man, the head honcho of the football department at one of the biggest clubs in Australia, one of the biggest clubs. If he's got Kane Liddell coming round and putting fingers in his pies, how the hell is he still there? So for me, to answer your question, Brad Lloyd, he's becoming Barker, isn't he? He's like, he's just there all the freaking time. And you never hear from him as well. Like I don't even know
when there's crisis there is.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the only thing I know about him is his brother used to be pretty good at football. So I think, if it's dimmer. But you know what? Left field suggestion.
Yeah, interesting. Here
Luke Hodge.
Wow.
Tactician on the field.
You wouldn't want to give up that media role,
General.
would you? Nice cushy role.
Well, we're paying our lawyers a lot of money. Flick some money to him, do you know what I mean? Like,
Hodgie, if you're watching, if you got a price, mate.
Hodgie, but it had to be someone for me.
Hodgie, if you got a price, mate, if you're seriously actually watching this, you heard it here from the POMM first.
I'd love him. Hodgie.
There you go.
Some tactical nous.
Sure. Beautiful. That's it for the questions. That's fantastic. We're going to go into the Who's Cooking segment. So we're going to do our top 5 teams and our top 5 players. We actually got a cameo appearance here from Paul. He sent in a video all the way from London. Given that, we'll be playing that very shortly. I'll quickly run through my top 5 teams. I've got Collingwood on top, clearly on top, Premiership favourites. As I said, if they win the Premiership, I'll be having a holiday in Brazil or something for like 3 months. It's ridiculous. Port Adelaide is my number 2 team at this current point in time. I'm very worried about Port Adelaide. I like what they're doing, as you've spoken about. Good culture at the moment, moving the ball good. all the pieces are falling together. Fantastic. Number 3 is Brisbane. They sort of failed a mini test on Sunday night against Adelaide. They did shoot themselves in the foot. I think they were there. The game was there for the taking. They kicked 1 goal, 9 in the third. Still got a few question marks to answer Brisbane. I know they keep answering, but they are also a team that I believe is up there. I'm just going to have Port Adelaide ahead of them. I think Port Adelaide on their day are a little bit better than Brisbane on their day. So number 4, the other team that I believe has gears is Melbourne. I don't think we've seen the best of Melbourne. They're sitting 7-4 at the moment, 4th on the ladder. I do think they have another element to go, and I do think they strike me as a team that are sort of prepping themselves for a second half year assault, which is obviously yet to be seen, but I'd be very, very cautious of Melbourne. And number 5 is the Western Bulldogs. Happy to give them a mulligan on the weekend against Gold Coast. I don't think that game set up well for them. I like the way the Bulldogs move the ball. I like the way they've rejuvenated since their first 2 games. They've got a lot of good going for them, and the big thing for the Bulldogs that I think will hold them in good stead is Liam Jones. I don't want to underestimate how big of an influence Liam Jones is to that defence. If you look at some of the numbers from last year compared to this year, and the drastic changes that in their defensive game, it's ridiculous. You can't assume. It's fair to say you can attribute it to his addition. So Bulldogs number 5. My top 5 players. Marcus Bontempelli still at number 1. Nick Dacos number 2. Your number 1 man. Number 3, Zach Butters from Port Adelaide has elevated himself in the last fortnight. He's actually been really good the whole year, obviously, but these last 2 weeks have been outstanding. Jordan De Goey at number 4. I'm noticing with Jordan De Goey, he's directly having an influence on games. So, this top 5 players is basically for people that, or players that are genuinely influencing games. And I believe Collingwood are winning games, not just on the back of Nick Dacos and everyone else, but Jordan De Goey is a major driver of that. And number 5 is Toby Green. So Toby Green, inspirational player, 6 foot tall, plays like he's 7 foot tall, massive. Again, influencing games, doing great things at GWS. So, yeah, we're going to show you the video of Paul. Paul's going to run through his top 5, so if you want to have a look.
We're checking in for the weekend grill right in the heart of London, as you can see in the background behind me. Round 11 done and dusted. Plenty of talking points. I'll go through my top 5 teams and my top 5 players as well, just to keep it short and sweet for AD and the crew this week. Number 1, we've got Collingwood in as the best team in the comp at the moment. No surprises. Port in at seed number 2. Then it's Melbourne, Brisbane and the Western Bulldogs rounding out the top 5. And then for my players, there's a little bit of shaking and grooving in this one. Still got the Bont as my best player in the league. It's then Nick Dacos. Toby Green's made a move to number 3 in my rankings. Charlie Curnow and Jeremy Cameron round out my top 5. So like, subscribe, Weekend Grill. That's where it's at. I'll see you when I'm back in Melbourne.
Did you see Paul? What do you think of him? How good does he look?
He's been enjoying good proper beer, hasn't he?
How good's the coat?
Yeah, do you know
looks radiant.
The coat, you can see his mate Mars has massaged some oil into his head.
His cousin.
He's still his mate.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Paul. We look forward to having you back soon, mate. Now, do you want to give us your top 5 quickly and your top 5 teams and top 5 players without notice?
I think it has to be the Pies.
Yep.
Number 1,
sure.
Doesn't it? Number 2, I'm being a bit different here. I reckon Melbourne. You look at their percentage, it's the best in the league.
Yep.
I think they're doing a Geelong last year. They're going through the gears and waiting for the proper football to begin. Port, Brisbane, follow that up. I think both of them are teams that can either be 10 out of 10 or 1 out of 10. It depends what day, but I think they're going to be there. And you know what? 5th, they're clinging on in my POMM ranking, St Kilda.
Yeah, okay. That is a curveball. Okay, nice.
I think you can't fight rigid, and I think they are a very rigid side, and I think they'll continue to be. They had a bit of a poor week this week, but I think Ross is ultimate average coach in the terms of, and I don't mean that nasty to him, it's the kind of guy that will just always bring you back up. It's not going to be a flag-winning side, but they're going to be a tough side to beat. Yeah,
they're very hard to break down. Beautiful, thanks. And also just your top 5 players if you have them.
So top 5 players is going to be tough, but I mean, obviously, I'd say...
This creates a lot of speculation.
I would say definitely Bont. Bont has been sensational this year.
Okay.
He's done a Cripps, hasn't he?
Yep.
but he doesn't get the respect that Cripps does, I don't think. I think Bontempelli has been a top player for the last 10 years and people forget about him. Zach Butters would definitely be number 2. I'm going to throw a curveball here for me. The best player in the league without any respect, if you did that.
Without any respect. So the most,
Jack Sinclair.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
Tears teams up. Transition football is in vogue. He is the main man, the architect. I love watching Sinclair play, and I'm a sucker for his hair. 4, Nick... Do you know what I mean? Sucker for his hair. What a hair. And then 4 and 5, and probably why they're the best team in the league, Nick Dacos. Phenomenal. Score involvements from a guy that plays that far back. I loved him on the ball this week. Against a weak side, I think Fly showed why he understands development. And number 5, Jordan Nagoe, playing on the ball now. And this guy can play footy, can't we? Say what you want about John Nagoe, but I'll tell you what, you pay to watch him play football. Phenomenal year. And it's great to see because Jordan Nagoe is one of them players that reminds me a bit like Dustin Martin 2016. We keep talking about him, but you're yet to see it. And now we're starting to see it. And you know what? If Collingwood, when Collingwood make finals, if they win this flag, be prepared for Jordan Nagoe to do a Dustin Martin. I reckon it could be a final series to remember from Nagoe.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned John Nagoe. I think the penny has dropped, or it would appear that way from his, his spats in Bali in New York that he's gotten over, and he's so important to that team, and he does add that X factor, and he kicks goals. He damages teams.
You can see him doing it.
He genuinely he influences games. Like this guy pulls games by the horns and just goes, no, the game is going in this direction because I want it to go in that direction. So
I watch him and just think you can see a Dustin Martin final series, can't you? Like, MCG, 100,000 people there.
Stage is his.
It's all square, 3/4 time, and then he just goes, you know what? Today's the day.
Let's flick the switch.
3 goals and 15 touches and a quarter. Pies get home by 30 and people start to take note.
Perfect. I like it. Okay, thanks for that, Pom. That was awesome. Now, quickly, round 12 preview. Shortened round, we've got a bye round this week, so we'll quickly go from Friday through to Sunday. Melbourne versus Carlton Friday night, 7:50 at the MCG. Who you got? One word, unless it's North Melbourne or fucking St Kilda or something. One word.
Carlton.
Okay. Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn, Adelaide Oval, Saturday, 1:45. This might be 2 words.
I was going to say, I want to tip off on because he turned me on. But no, at Adelaide, Port.
Port Adelaide?
Yeah.
Too easy. West Coast versus Collingwood, 4:40 at Optus Stadium. Whatever.
You got more chance of Jimmy Hoffa coming for dinner than you have West Coast winning that.
I reckon Collingwood
by
whatever they want.
By probably what the average winning score for the POMMs is in the Ashes this year.
What's that? 30
probably
runs?
220.
Oh my God! Look at you. Fuck off. Go back to Lords, will you?
Bazball, can't find it.
This is an interesting game. This is a season on the line here, in my opinion. Western Bulldogs versus Geelong at Marvel on Saturday night. I just before you go, I just want to say I'm still a big fan of Geelong. I earlier in the year I did tip them to win the premiership. I still have a high opinion of them, but this game could be season defining. What do you think?
Dogs.
Yep. All right, well, that means my bet on Geelong's cast because I don't think they can win the Premiership. If they lose this week, they cannot win the Premiership. Gold Coast Suns versus Adelaide in Darwin. So Gold Coast is staying there. Adelaide's making the trek up. This is going to be an interesting game. What do you think?
It's slippy there, isn't it? And for some reason...
No, but it wasn't. I watched that game on Saturday night between the Bulldogs and Adelaide. It wasn't as greasy. Like, the game started at 7:30 last week. The Gold Coast and Bulldogs. It wasn't as greasy until like the third quarter.
But it is warm in Darwin. I've been there a few times. It's melt weather. Like you if you're me, you melt in Darwin.
This because you're a POMM. That's why you love Tasmania.
You can't stay there for more than 20 minutes.
Without putting the air conditioner on?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Without the air conditioner, without ripping layers of skin off. I find it weird because Darwin... It seems the most even crowd as well because they just froth football. So they don't seem to have a loyalty to a team. They just seem to be like,
whoever's going.
This is cool.
What are you thinking?
I can't see. I mean, Gold Coast would be favourites in that game, but no.
They're equal favourites now that Laird got announced that he's going to play.
But I think
Gold Coast start favourites.
I think Adelaide win.
Yeah?
I think
Adelaide win, but I think Gold Coast start
I can
favourites.
see Rankine giving us his quality celebrations. I'm a
How
big
good is he? He's an entertainer.
Rochelle and Rankine. Tell you what, I'd pay all the money in China to go and see them play. They play football the right way.
In China. Oh, okay, because Australia's got no money, is it?
No, all the money in China. It's a phrase.
Is it? Oh, I thought you were talking about the money in Australia, which you got none. Anyway, Giants versus Richmond on Sunday, 4th of June at Giants Stadium. Another interesting game.
New coach for Richmond, which means Richmond win.
Shame that philosophy didn't apply last week.
Yeah, but you can't count it the first week.
I know. All right, Richmond, interesting. I'm going to go GWS. Another one here. How far does Essendon beat North Melbourne by? Sunday at Marvel. You're not hesitant, are you?
No, if Clarkson was back, I probably would be hesitant because I think Clarkson is a genius.
Sure.
Essendon by about 38.
38. Okay. Beautiful. Well, that's a wrap. So just quickly, you're going Carlton to beat Melbourne.
Have to.
Yeah, of course. You want to tip Hawthorn, but you tip Port Adelaide. You're going Collingwood. You're going the Bulldogs. You're going Adelaide to knock off Gold Coast. Richmond with Andrew McWalter to get his first win as an interim coach against GWS, and Essendon. Is that right? Beautiful. I think you've outdone me. Now, thank you for watching, everyone. That was fantastic. Thank you, Pom, for coming on.
My
Guys, like, share, and subscribe. If you want to see what Pommy stuff is, it's Pommy in Oz YouTube, YT. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Pommy
it is,
in Oz YT. We'll put it in the link. Thank you for coming in on short notice. Much appreciated, and much love and much respect to you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. This has been one of the best. I've really had fun. Thank you.
I've enjoyed every minute. Yeah, and make sure everyone likes and subscribes this.
Yeah. We'll put that at the end, and hopefully our man Paul will be back from London, maybe getting that oil. You see him walking around with his chest puffed out. He's going to look all tanned and everything.
Yeah,
he's going to look like an Italian god.
He might have gone to that place Shane Warne did for the hair. Hey, he might come back with a full.
Oh, not the hotel where Warney had a force. I shouldn't say that.
A full barnet like this. Look, when he comes back, he might have gone to the hair studios.
But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. And again, thank you to Pommy and Oz, Dan Williams for joining us. Have a good one.